and welcome to another episode of Mysteries with a History, where I'll take you on the wild ride into the unknown, the strange, and the mysterious. Like you, I have questions, and like you, I want answers. First, I want to say hi to everyone in the live chat today. Donna, Curious George, Greg, Matthew, Spaghetti Lee. How's everyone doing? Steppenwolf. Today we have a lot of things to talk about. And what that is today we will be talking about the experiment that took place during World War II, the alleged Philadelphia experiment. But before we really dive deep into today's subject, let me bring in my extra special co-host, Mr. Jimmy Church from Fade to Black. Jimmy, how you doing, my friend? You can only do that joke once.
Man, how you doing?
First, I want to say I like the hair. I like the hair very much.
Yeah. Oh man! So today, this is really funny and a great, great subject today. I had to get my hair cut. I'm leaving out of town tomorrow for a conference, and I'm telling the very, I don't want to say her name. Just cut it. Just do your thing. She goes, but, and it was really funny. And she was all nervous. I was like, man, just cut it. So anyway, there you go. There you go.
That was a very anticlimactic story, honestly.
Well, there was more to it than that. I had to race home to get here and get on the air. And Christina's like, and I walked in the studio right at showtime. Christina's like, it's like,
I was not doing that. I just texted you and I said we're going live. So anyways, let's go into this. So I will start off with the summary, and then we will jump into all of the people in the story, and we're going to bring it into the conference going to be happening this weekend as well. So what is the Philadelphia experiment? Well, the United States was just entering the war during World War II, and scientists were looking for a way for Navy ships to be undetectable by radar. Then they came across Einstein's unified field theory and decided to apply it. Allegedly, Project Rainbow, later known as the Philadelphia experiment, takes a turn for the worst twice. Now, with doing a lot of the research that I could, reading books, watching documentaries, and even hearing certain people that talked out about the experiment, the dates were not consistent. It didn't seem like a lot of people had the same dates. So what I'm going to say instead was that it happened in October of 1943, because they're all just a little bit different by a few days. So the first test took place in October 1943 by the U.S. Navy, and the ship was able to disappear and reappear. However, men on the crew became mentally and physically ill that official personnel postponed further testing until later in October of the same year. This time, the results were horrendous. Allegedly, the ship, USS Eldridge, was covered in a green fog and then a flash of light. Quickly after, it disappeared. It reappeared about 200 miles away in Virginia and then disappeared once again back to the test site in Philadelphia. This alleged story deals with insanity, time travel, and people infused into the USS Eldridge naval ship. And there are also a lot of important people in this story. We have the author Morris Jessup, who wrote the book The Case of the UFO. We also have Carl Allen, or Carlos Miguel Aldin, and Al Bielek, whose story was influenced, his story inspired the movie The Philadelphia Experiment, which came out in 1984. With this story, nothing has been proven, and everything about the experiment and side effects of the experiment have been denied by the Office of Navy Research. So this is merely an alleged account, but regardless, a popular one, and one that is truly a mystery with a history. And there's the summary.
Got that right. This is mystery of the history. Now, here, I'm going to start off with this. With the Philadelphia experiment, we've all heard about it. I think most have seen the movie. I've seen like versions too of. I think I saw like a Lifetime channel version of it too as well. Anyway, so I think everybody's familiar with the idea behind the Philadelphia experiment, and one of the things about this is when you first start getting into ufology, this story comes up, and sooner or later somebody's going to start talking about it, and you'll hear about it, and then it will be referenced. Now, oh, by the way, where's my chat?
You still have access to it. It's going to be on the side, which, by the way, Mike, thank you so much for being a member on YouTube. Thank you. That's awesome. Woo-hoo.
Okay, I don't see it here. Normally it's public chat, private chat. Now I only have private chat.
Okay, so you're just going to go to the very top of StreamYard on your side, and it's going to say comments.
You have a totally different. Okay, look. How do I share my screen? Okay. I'm going to show you my screen. If
okay.
Where it says comments, I'll tell you what. You show me where it says comments, and I'll send you a new mixing board, microphone, couple of boxes of headphones. I'll send you a new boom arm.
Are you trying to bribe me, Jimmy?
I just want to find my comments, man. Where?
Okay. On your right side. Okay, on your right side, it's gonna say comments.
No, it does not.
It does.
Okay. How do I share my screen?
Okay, at the very bottom of your screen, it's gonna say share. And it's gonna be a little laptop with a plus sign.
Okay. Okay, I'm sharing my screen. This one, right? Share.
You're not. Okay, got it. Okay, I'm going to share it online.
Okay, show me where it says comments. I'm just curious.
Okay.
Do.
I don't see it, my friend.
So much for the mixing board.
No. Hold on.
Right out the window.
Hold on.
I mean, I want to hang out with everybody. I want to talk about the Philadelphia experiment. Okay.
Wait.
While you are fixing that for me.
How can I fix it?
Okay, everybody.
You should be able to see it now. Okay.
Oh, there it is. That's my girl right there.
So do I still get the mixing board?
Yes.
Okay, but let's seriously get into the story.
Let's move on. Even though I can't comment, but I can see everybody's comments now.
Right.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay. Is this because you will get those out there, and sometimes some pretty serious researchers that view the Philadelphia experiment and the story and the Eldridge and everything about it as historical fact. Okay. And you'll go down that rabbit hole, and then you will see the other side where it has been completely taken apart. And there is a lot of research that has gone into this. And you try to balance out the two and try to figure out what's really going on. This is the thing, that the story has been retold so many times and referenced so many times that it becomes dogma. It becomes part of the record. It becomes fact. And there are many out there that won't go back and actually take a peek into it. Now,
because there's a lot to it, but then you have like this first kind of cushion little layer, which is very easy and easy to understand. But then when you really dive into it, and especially with Al Bielek, there's a bunch of other connections with other projects, even Roswell, that comes into the Philadelphia experiment that I don't think a lot of people cover, and I hopefully will be able to cover today, because there's a lot to it that I did not expect.
Absolutely. And so the origins of everything start out just amazingly great, which is you get a book, it's sent to the Navy, it's sent to the Pentagon, and in the margins of the book are these notes and these things and these footnotes, and it just takes off from there. Where did it come from? Who is this? Who is this person? And what is actually going on? We find out a few things, that the Eldridge was a real ship. It was docked at a couple of locations on the East Coast. Was it Tesla gets involved in this, and electronic equipment and stuff being brought on board? Now, okay, in its fundamental basics, the Eldridge and the story behind that, I believe, were true. Okay, so now this is the part that I am comfortable with.
Yeah.
There is if you have a television set, an old one, not flat screen, but back in the old days, the tube. There was a cable that went around the outside of the tube on the inside of the TV set. It's called a degausser. Okay, that's key to the Eldridge story and the Philadelphia experiment. Degaussing. Okay, what is degaussing? First off, degaussing is high voltage, and it in an electronic sense, will rebalance the high voltage buildup with a television tube. If you touch it, you're going to die. But this is what goes on the inside of it. Okay, so now this idea, this principle of degaussing extremely high voltages is the idea behind the theory of making a ship invisible to enemy radar.
Right.
Now, so could you have a ship like wrapped in a giant degaussing setup with huge voltages run on this ship, generators, in this case, Tesla coils were brought on board and things to power this up to fool enemy radar, not necessarily to make the ship disappear, but make this ship invisible to radar. Okay, everybody picking up what I'm putting down? That part of it and the experiments that were going on with the military during World War II, because we were, German U-boats and submarines were sinking ships all over the place, and people were dying, and it was pretty scary, and the wolf packs and things, and we had to figure out some kind of defensive measures to get over to Europe during World War II. So these were some of the experiments that were going on. The problem with it is, ships are made of steel, right?
Yeah.
Just throw all of this high voltage, through the ship. And how do you do that and not kill everybody? The second thing is electricity back then was still a pretty new thing. And remember, like Frankenstein in the movies, it's alive, and voltages and things. And electricity was something that was still new and fresh, and we didn't fully understand its capabilities. And one of the ideas was to maybe degauss an entire ship, throw all this voltage through it, and maybe it'll be invisible. So what would happen if they did bring all of this gear on board, float this ship out into the middle of the Atlantic, and then flip the switch?
Yeah.
Right.
Crazy stuff.
And nobody knows what's going to happen. And now, did guys get fused into the hull? Maybe. I mean, this is high voltages. But they flipped the switch, and maybe the dang thing did disappear. right? Maybe, and that's the part of this story where you've got a whole lot of truth and a whole lot of military experimentation that was going on. We were fighting the Germans, right, and trying to figure all of that nastiness out, and then the story surfaces. So the Eldridge is real. Was there experiments? And it is the craziest thing to dive into, and then trying to figure out what is right, what is true. Maybe it's all true, but then this book surfaces in the Pentagon, and trying to figure out who wrote the footnotes and what is going on. And as this, I'm going to hand this back over to you in a second, Christy, because I'm very curious as to how you started to assemble all of this information and try to figure out what's going on.
That's a lot.
This book made the circles inside of the Pentagon, and I mean, it was like being decoded and figured out, and it was freaking some people out in naval intelligence as to the significance of this book and what the implications were. And they've got to go back to World War II and look what was going on in these secret projects. And was somebody time traveling? Al Bielek and all of that came much, much later. And he's another fantastic, fascinating character. So as you started to see the real part of this, right? The book, the footnotes, the Eldridge, trying to hide ships from enemy radar, what started to go through your mind?
What the heck? What am I reading? But with this field, and the more you research the paranormal, the supernatural, and UFO topic, I feel like you discriminate less, and you just kind of listen more. Your ears get a little bit wider, your eyes become a little bit larger, and you're like, I mean, with everything that I've read, it could maybe be possible, but these are all alleged accounts. There's no physical evidence to back up any of these claims. When the ONR, right, the Office of Naval Research, was asked about the Philadelphia experiment, which they wrote a paper on to the public, stating, we don't believe any of this happened. We deny everything. None of this is true. It's all fictional. And, even though with this field, we always want to hear the government say it is true, right? When they say that it's not, people just kind of burn the paperwork, and they're like, okay, well, if they didn't admit it, then it obviously didn't happen. Now, is that the case? Well, we don't know. We don't know. I do want to get a little bit more into that, but first we have some super chats. I want to say thank you first off to the Zetil, and it says, you need to try the Pringles ramen version. I did not know that was a version. I'm for it.
That's not real. That's like the Philadelphia experiment of ramen noodles. There's no way.
If it is, I am. Their pizza Pringles are disgusting, but if they have ramen flavor, preferably chicken flavor, I'll try it.
I would rather have Pringles flavored ramen noodles.
No, I mean, look, ramen already tastes like plastic. So so Race, he called me live because I was just talking to him, Race Hobbs, and I said, I'm live with Jimmy. And do you want to say? He just wrote back and he just cussed you out. Let's put it that way.
You know what? It's because I'm not replying to him. He's been put in the corner. He's been put in the corner.
Maddie Pearson, thank you so much for the 50. That's insane. And it says, now that Jimmy's on the live chat, listen to Monday's Fade to Black show on YouTube. In the first 40 seconds is the white noise. There's a disembodied voice, 3 of the words sounding like this fire Mojave.
What? Really?
That's new to me. And I hear all of your shows.
This fire Mojave? Wow. No, I don't know. It's first I've heard about it. Okay. Any other super chats going on?
But I thank you for everyone dropping in, for everyone being so lively in the live chat. This is a really cool topic. So for a little bit more about this, I mean, like I said at the beginning, I read a lot of books, I watched documentaries, I read articles, and I even stumbled across Paola Harris, who's going to be in Laughlin, Nevada with you for the conference. And hopefully we'll get into her about that in a bit, because I want to hear what you think of her personality. This way people can decipher how the interview went with Al Bielek. But before that, I feel like that would be appropriate, because I don't know her firsthand. So one of the books I read was Project Rainbow: The Horrors of the Philadelphia Experiment by Stuart Carapola, and this was published in 2017. And here in this book in particular, it goes into a little bit more of the scientific aspects of the experiment, because like we had said at the beginning, the whole trying to be invisible by radar was kind of piggybacking on Albert Einstein's unified field theory, and then bringing in Tesla coils as well, trying to make it all invisible. So I feel like even though this story is a pretty wild alleged account, I mean, can you imagine hearing people tell you stories that, oh, a ton of crewmen on the Navy ship was infused into the ship? I mean, you would be like, total BS. There's no way. There's no way. But when you bring more of a scientific aspect to it, it can make certain things a little bit more believable. Now, like you had said, there's a lot of research that has contradicted all of the research, or all of the more scientific aspects to it, and even stating that how this USS Eldridge was able to transport from Philadelphia to Virginia in just a few moments, is because they took some secret channel, right? Because usually it would take about 2 days to get from one place to the other using the ocean. However, it states that the Navy had access to a certain channel that no one else can use, which made it in just a few hours. Now, again, there's not really any evidence to back up those claims for both aspects, but I feel like when we are doing this show and even talking about anything crazy, well, this is pretty crazy, it's good to have both aspects, to have both perspectives, and to have as little bias as possible.
Now, this is I want to read this is straight from Wikipedia.
Nice.
But although Wikipedia is not anyway, don't worry about that. But the way that they lay it out here, everything that we had just talked about is laid out in this timeline, and I think all of this is very, very important. Okay, so it originated in 1955. The story, when Carl M. Allen sent an anonymous package marked Happy Easter, containing a copy of Morris K. Jessup's book, The Case for the UFO, Unidentified Flying Objects. It's a great book, by the way. He sent this to the United States Office of Naval Research. The book was filled with handwritten notes in its margins, written with 3 different shades of blue ink, appearing in detail to debate among 3 individuals, only one of whom is given the name Jemi, Jemi. I'm going to come back to that in a second. They commented on Jessup's ideas about propulsions for flying saucers and alien races, and expressed concern that Jessup was too close to discovering their technology and the propulsion systems. So now they talk about gypsies in these columns, 2 different types of people that were living in outer space. They weird capitalization and punctuations, and all of this. Got to remember, this is the Office of Naval Intelligence and Research, and they've got code breakers. It just came off of World War II. Everybody was reading the margins of this book, trying to figure out what's going on. Okay, so there were these references to the Philadelphia experiment, and one commenter in this column reassures the other people that are making these annotations that it contained the theory of which Jessup wrote about. Now, shortly thereafter, January 1956, Allen began sending a series of letters to Jessup using his given name as Carlos Miguel Allende. All right. The first known letter warned Jessup not to investigate the levitation of unidentified flying objects. Allen put forward a story of dangerous science based upon unpublished theories of Albert Einstein. He further claimed a scientist named Franklin Reno put these theories into practice at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard in October 1943. Allen claimed to have witnessed this experiment while serving aboard the SS Andrew Fruseth. F-U-R-U-S-E-T-H, Fruseth. In Allen's account, a destroyer escort was successfully made invisible, but the ship inexplicably teleported to Norfolk, Virginia from the Philadelphia shipyard for several minutes and then reappeared in the Philadelphia yard. The ship's crew was supposed to have suffered various side effects, including insanity and frozen in place and stuff like that. Jessup wrote back that requesting more information to corroborate his story. Allen said his memory would have to be recovered. Dun, dun, dun. And referred Jessup to what seems to be a non-existent Philadelphia newspaper article that Allen claimed covered the incident. And that was the start of everything. And when you have this kind of genesis, the Office of Naval Research, Morris K. Jessup, the Pentagon, and the cryptographers, and those that are into decoding things and trying to figure all of this out. That was how do I say this? This becomes part of the historical record. All of this can be traced back, and you have a legitimate source for everything. And that's the best part of the Philadelphia experiment story, in my opinion.
And the book that has all of the annotations is also possible to obtain. The one that I read with the annotations in it, obviously it wasn't like copied. I mean, not what I mean. I mean like Xeroxed. Instead, it was retyped. And that was the book that I had mentioned earlier called Project Rainbow, The Horrors of the Philadelphia Experiment, that was published in 2017 with all of the annotations in different colors by each of the writers. Now, when we're talking about each of the writers, it was later believed, and I think Carl even admitted, that he was all three people writing in that book later on, and that he was the one that turned in Jessup's book to the ONR. Now, do we know that for certain? No, but it's also stated that one of the people that was making the annotations in the book allegedly was supposed to be depicted as an extraterrestrial. One of them wasn't supposed to be human, while the other two were considered twins. And this is all anecdotal. For those that have read the book or that want to read it, you can come up with your own conclusions. It is very difficult to decipher if they're twins, if one's an alien or not. But their input on the book, I found it, and I'm not going to lie, I found it difficult to follow because there were a lot of things that I felt were out of context.
Mm-hmm.
So, and maybe it was supposed to be that way. It was supposed to be confusing for only those that were like on the inside of the story. Maybe this is just speculation. But when I read it through cover to cover, I'm like, what?
Well,
Did I miss something?
Right. So it's Allen writing as Allende.
Mm-hmm. Right, because it's the same person.
Who is writing as three different people debating the UFO question, and in a subtext, the Philadelphia experiment, all in the margins of the book. So it seems that the intention was to have the appearance that somebody was reading the book, they wrote the notes down, gave the book to somebody else.
Right.
They would read the book, they would answer the notations and put their own ideas down, give it to a third person, and it would come back around. And that's the way that it is assembled. So you have this schizophrenic three faces of Eve, Sybil, right, situation where you've got multiple personalities coming from one mind, talking to each other, debating UFOs in the margins of this book. The crazy part is this gets sent to the Office of Naval Research. Very smart people are there, and they took the book very serious, and I think as they should, and they decrypt the thing, and they figure this out later. This is what I remember. I'm gonna go back and look into this, but they have another meeting, and I think they show the book to Jessup and a couple of other higher ups at the Pentagon, and they go, "This is what is going on," and this was later on in the 1950s. This was at their office for like 2, 3, 4, 5 years, being passed around and decrypted. It's a fascinating story. They took it very serious.
They did, and a little bit more about him. When he was about to have another interview with the ONR, or I guess like a meeting, he allegedly committed suicide. And how that happened was he was in his car and he had carbon monoxide poisoning. And what these last few projects that we've been covering lately, Jimmy, is this is a reoccurring theme. People just committing suicide. Now, there have been stories that after Jessup was interacting with the ONR, he was becoming very depressed. You know, he was going through a divorce and he was having other issues in his household and in his life as well. So it is very possible that that depression led him to commit suicide. But then you have conspiracy theorists believe that he did not take his own life.
No, he was so close. Morris K. Jessup was a very, very interesting, very smart guy. And he was so close to the inner circles of the UFO question and what was going on, and publishing these books that we've talked about a lot of people that have died lately.
Yeah, we have.
And it can cause you because the realization that hits somebody. Okay, we all know James Fox. Okay, I'm going to tell everybody a James Fox story.
Okay.
And we have talked about this on the air. I'm not revealing this, but there's a certain piece of UFO history that centers around James Fox. Okay, now James Fox has been making documentaries. Out of the blue, I Know What I Saw, and then he he's on Larry King. He's the spokesperson for our community, and just out there trying to find these answers. It's his life. This is what he does, and we love him for that. Okay, so he's doing a TV series, and I don't know what network it's for, but Discovery, History, A&E, whatever. Okay, that part doesn't matter. But he winds up at Stan Romanek's house, and they're filming there. And Stan at the time was the center of some pretty fantastic claims and UFO videos and photographs and stuff. So anyway, so they're filming all night, and James is in the dark. Night vision cameras, and he's sitting at this dining room table, and there's a window facing outside at the end of the dining room table. One of the crew members thought it would be funny if he put on a gray ET mask, rubber mask. It's got blinking eyes, and looked through the window. Okay. So James is sitting there in the dark, and E.T. looks in the window and eyes are blinking, right? And he loses his poo-poo. He freaks. Wow, right? Finally, right? And he jumps up and he goes to the window, and then the crew member pops up, and it's a puppet, and it's a puppet head. Ha, ha, ha. And James quits, walks off the set, quits the TV series, and went through a paradigm shift. Okay, in that, for about 5 seconds, he just saw ET for the first time. Right, just saw ET, and you see the emotions and his reaction, right? Well, that thing And then when you turn around and you find out, you go through that wave of emotion, and then to find out that it was a trick played on you, now you go swing the other way. And that is with different UFO researchers out there that they're on this quest for their life, like Morris K. Jessup, Paul Benowitz, right? Phil Schneider. You go on these lifelong quests, and when you are exposed at that moment that this is real, like James Fox sitting at the table, right? For 5 seconds, it was real. And you see what happens to him. And it's the same thing with Morris K. Jessup. You know, you are so close. Did he find out something? Did he see something? And that's a paradigm shift. It's the real deal, life-changing moment for some of these individuals. And I look at Morris K. Jessup, and I think the same thing. James McDonald, same thing, same exact thing. And James McDonald, who is somebody that we should cover on the show in the future, probably one of the smartest, most important people ever in the history of ufology, right up there with somebody like Stanton Friedman, and extremely educated astronomer, you know, and an atmospheric scientist chasing the UFO question. Dies mysteriously. Suicide? Murder? We don't know. Was he suicided? Don't know. So anyway, so back to this.
Back to the story, Wolf.
And so you're right. When at the height of all of this, and the everything gets revealed back to Jessup and the Office of Naval Intelligence, I believe they had a meeting at the Pentagon or at their offices. They bring him in, and then shortly after that, Jessup's dead.
Right. Yeah, because the book came out in the mid 1950s, and then he died in 1959. So you only had those few years of where he was confronted by the ONR. He got a little bit of pump of fame, and then he was gone. And during this time when he was writing this book and writing letters to Carl Allen, right, he asked Carl for more information, more scientific evidence to back up his claims about what happened during the Philadelphia experiment. And he stated, Carl Allen stated later on in a letter, which again, this is public information, you can find it in the book, that he was out of town and he just received his letter and they was going to give him information as soon as he could. And with that, I feel like, and this is assumption, it felt like Jessup might have started to believe Carl, even though he was using a pseudonym, which for some might be a total turnoff, and I don't think that's the case. But it seemed like Jessup was really believing what Carl was saying, because in that letter, and this is what I want to get at, in that letter, he stated, look, I will go under hypnosis. I will take a certain medication so that I do not lie to you. However, you need to get the best hypnosis that you can find, because I do not want any of my data to be contaminated. I was brainwashed after the Philadelphia experiment. The government took all the crewmen that were still mentally there, and they were told their memories were totally wiped about the experiment. So he stated, look, I will go under hypnosis to reveal everything that I can remember, because he states the brain never forgets. Even though we might forget right here, right now, somehow in the brain it will always be stored, and it can be pulled out and come into this reality. And I think with that kind of very openness, Jessup was thinking, okay, maybe this guy is the real deal, even though his accounts are so outlandish, so hard to believe. Carl believes what he is saying, and that he'll go under anything to prove the truth. However, this never happened. They did not go through any experiments, to my knowledge, and anything that even if Carl did go under hypnosis, that is not public information.
Now, we've kind of saved in a weird way, and we haven't even done the deep dive into Al Bielek. And by the way, if some of the best Some of the best entertainment in all of ufology is listening to Al Bielek.
Mm-hmm.
You got to do this is what you do with Al. You do them in like 6-hour chunks. You go into full meditation because dude starts and doesn't
everywhere.
stop for 4 hours.
I mean, he was on Coast to Coast 4 times with Art Bell, and if Art Bell's taking him seriously, well then.
Well, I'm telling you, everybody needs a crazy uncle like that to tell those stories, and Al Bielek told a great story, and recounted in such detail. What 10,000 years in the future, 500 years in the future, and what he saw, and then coming back and talking. Okay, anyway, and he talked really fast. Okay, so let's leave Al Bielek out for a second. So for our members that are listening to this
live
and can go back and think about the subjects that we have covered in the last month. And Phil
James
Schneider.
Fox just texted me.
Did he really?
Yeah, he did.
Is he listening?
I don't think so.
Oh, that's no fun. Okay. Tell church to put a sock in it. Is this okay? Paul Benowitz, Dulcie, William Moore, right? Okay, everybody remember all of these conversations and William Moore's place in ufology. Without William Moore, there's no Roswell. I'm going on the record, right? Charles Berlitz. Without Bill Moore, there'd be no Philadelphia experiment.
Because even he wrote a book about it.
That's right. Now, this is where, like I said, this is where we're kind of saving the best for last here. Because at that time, and I want everybody to just start taking, what did Jimmy just say? Okay, hold on a minute. What? Okay. Bermuda Triangle.
Mm-hmm.
Write that down. That's Charles Berlitz. Okay, and so Berlitz writes that, and then they write the Philadelphia experiment with Bill Moore, and then they come out with Roswell with Bill Moore, and all right next to each other. Boom, boom, boom. 3 of the biggest selling books of the late 70s. And the Bermuda Triangle, if you think about it, last night I did a show on the Alaska Triangle. The impact of the Bermuda Triangle on the world and what it did can't be measured. Charles Berlitz, right? And then the Philadelphia experiment. And so the Philadelphia experiment, like Roswell and like the Bermuda Triangle, is jumping back, getting into the historical record, taking the facts. And so those that are reading the book, they read the book as nonfiction. Everybody assumes this is some crazy thing that happened in 1943. Here's the proof of it. Everything is stated right here. And they lay it all out. And the Albert Einstein is dropped, and his theories and his work is dropped in this book, along with some other heavy names, and it all lines up in the historical record. And suddenly, the Philadelphia experiment by Charles Berlitz and William Moore becomes historical record. And so many researchers, including myself, Cristina, very early on, when you go and you read that book, it's like Roswell, like the Bermuda Triangle and disappearing ships. The ships are dated and they're there. These are real events, right? These planes, these are all real events. You just take it as fact. And that's what everybody did, including myself, with the Philadelphia experiment in 1980. It was a crazy time, but isn't it interesting that it's Charles Berlitz and William Moore?
William Moore's an interesting character because he's had his fingers in a lot of things on the UFO phenomena. And I don't know if we'll be covering that today, but maybe in another show. But I want to talk now about Al Bielek. I mean, we've been touching on him here and there, but I feel like him and his story really put all the bits and pieces together. And with him as well, he's done tons of conferences, UFO conferences. He's been in TV shows. He's even had a one-on-one interview with Paula Harris and several times with Art Bell on Coast to Coast AM. I watched quite a few of these just to get a feel for him. And I just want to kind of go over that. But the first thing I want to mention, talking about Roswell, was he believed, and he stated this in one of his conferences coming out of his mouth, and I'm paraphrasing, but he stated that he believed Roswell really did happen. He was able to get that information during the Montauk Project, and that he believed that it was humans from the future to warn us, well, them from when Roswell happened, about the nuclear weapons. And I was like, whoa. I mean, there are so many aspects to Roswell. It's insane. Like there is no one story. And I feel like even though it's one of the most famous cases, I think it's one of the hardest to actually talk about because everyone has their own theory. Everyone says they know the inside man. Everyone says, oh, I know the truth. And they're all so different from one another that I feel like that story is probably the hardest to understand fully.
Why do you think that?
Well, like I had just said, there are so many. Everyone has their own belief about what happened in 1947, and including Al Bielek, who said, "Well, I think it's people from the future warning us about nuclear weapons." And then you have other people saying, "No, it's aliens." You have some people saying, "No, it's the Nazis." Then you have, "Well, those aliens were actually small children doing an experiment." This, that, and the other, and no one has the answer to that. We have a super chat, thank you, by Lazo, and it says, "The Secret Journey to Planet Serpo, another crazy book."
Yeah, definitely.
I've heard of it. I don't think I've read the full thing, but I'll look into it. Thank you so much for the super chat.
Yeah, I would love to do a Serpo show. And you know what? See, Serpo, it's kind of weird how you've Cristina picks the conversation, right? She picks these things.
Except Bob Lazar.
And that's right. I'll lay claim to that. It was a fun show too. Is this when you start to discuss and research, and you start to see the overlapping characters and names that come and go, like William Moore and Paul Benowitz and Charles Berlitz and these different characters. Rick Doty, because Doty overlaps into this, and then he's and then you bring up Serpo, that's Doty, right? And although Doty denies direct involvement, that part may be true. I'm not so sure, but Serpo has some very, very, very deep CIA disinformation connections, and excuse me, some say it was a CIA front from the word go, and a disinformation campaign. There are others that say it is absolutely real. There are others that will say that Serpo is the basis for Close Encounters of the Third Kind by Steven Spielberg. And that's the story brought to the screen. And it's who is involved? Once again, it's all the same names as we just move along. Serpo, I miss those days. I want to stay on the Philadelphia experiment, but the crazy part, how this is overlapping, the original Serpo website, which was one of the most complex, especially for back then, websites that was ever on the web up to that point. Very big, very large, lots of information, big. and constantly waiting updates from Martinez, and these things would come through, but overlapping back into things like the Philadelphia experiment and alien interaction and trading humans for ET in an exchange program, and the ET could live on this planet, and we would go live on planet Serpo and hang out there, on an assignment and come back, just like how it's depicted in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So anyway, so back to this. When the book comes out and followed up by the movie, and then Al Bielek starts making his public statements. Al seemed to be involved and knowledge of all of the big things that were going on at the same time. Philadelphia experiment, Roswell, Montauk, time travel, and
teleportation.
What's that? Oh, man. Well, okay. How he got it done? Well, so he would sit in the Montauk chair. Okay, put the helmet on, sit in the chair. They flip the switch, and you're time traveling. Okay, and yeah. Stuart Swerdlow, he's another character that I've had on Fade to Black. I've even had him on Coast to Coast. Very interesting guy. I think he's the last survivor of the Montauk Project that we can actually talk to directly. So Al, this is the thing. Al goes into the most amazing detail of all of these situations that are happening, and for him to talk about the far future, waking up in a hospital room, watching television. And I think when Al's telling these stories, there weren't flat screen TVs out yet, but he's talking about flat screen TVs in the hospital room. He's watching the news and getting caught up on the news, and would be able to speak about the stuff in such great detail. Mm-hmm. Well, Al did multiple shows, multiple interviews over many, many years, and I never caught him making a mistake with these details. And I listened to Al. I probably listened to Al for 15 years, and he is somebody worth looking into and checking out the story directly. But then when you back it up, Christina, taking Al out of the picture, but Bill Moore, Charles Berlitz, backing the story up. There was another book that was written in between. And then you back up further to 1960, 59, 58, 57. And that part of the story did Charles and Bill Moore just write a nonfiction science fiction novel, right? And just added some facts in there, just enough to pepper the story so it would germ in this petri dish into something that seemed real.
Yeah. Talking about Al, and he states that he traveled into the future of 2137, and he was in a hospital for 6 weeks with his brother due to radiation poisoning and radiation burns. And on the TV that he was watching on the news, he was stating that they only had news and educational programs. There was nothing in between that. And by this time, he stated quite a few things that were happening in history, how the United States had looked at the time. There was no longer Florida, and what was it? Atlanta was already on the part of the ocean, like on the border of the ocean. And then you have other pieces to it. Then he states, "Oh, deranged lunatic, thank you so much for the super sticker." Then, after spending 6 weeks in the hospital, Only he travels even further into the future, 2,749, just him alone, and he spent 2 years there. He stated that there was no currency at this time. He was able to get all the things he needs without using currency. He didn't really, I didn't hear him say what they used instead. They had like some kind of credit system. And then he was unsure on how he was able to travel even further into the future. But then he comes back and he picks up his brother back in the time that he had left him in 2137,
Right.
and they jump back to the 1980s. Then the scientists there says, you need to ruin your ship, you need to ruin the ship I'm going to put you on so that you can make it back to your time zone in the 1940s. I mean, like, that is crazier than any science fiction story. If this story is true, then everything that we have heard about this phenomenon, what people say, maybe the truth is weirder than fiction. If you're going to apply this story to that equation, then yes, this is a lot crazier than fiction.
Well, are we going to take a break?
Do you want to take a break? Let's take a break right now.
I'm looking at my atomic clock, and it's got a Cristina countdown on it.
All right. Well, then we will be right back after this short break.
Before I wind up and get all.
Okay. All right. We'll see. Let's go to the break.
Hi, I'm Micah Hanks, and let me tell you something. I support Cristina Gomez as a Patreon subscriber, and here's why you should too. She brings all of her unique insights to a whole new generation, and all while she's also going through college. Listen, support Cristina, become a Patreon subscriber today. You won't regret it.
All right, and we are back talking about the Philadelphia experiment with my co-host, Mr. Jimmy Church from Fade to Black. So, Jimmy, what did you want to say?
There is a couple of things that I wanted to jump into. I'm going to go forward, then I'm going to go backwards. This was some of the statements that were made very early on, and I'm surprised that the ONR didn't talk about any of this stuff publicly back in the 1950s, because then everything is still fresh, right? It's only 5 years away, right? From 1949 and things like that. But this is the deal. The USS Eldridge was not commissioned until August 27th, 1943. Commission means built. Okay? All right. So it wasn't a ship before August 27th, 1943. Commissioned is they break the champagne bottle, right? Push it off the dock. You don't know what I'm talking about, do you, Cristina?
No.
Okay. All right. It's a ceremony.
Oh, like in Shrek, where they throw the bottle and then it breaks the ship and then it sinks.
Exactly. And it remained in port in New York City until September of 1943. So therefore, the October experiment allegedly took place while the ship was on its first shakedown cruise in the Bahamas. Okay. Oh. It wasn't at the Philadelphia shipyard at all. Although proponents of the story claim that the ship's logs might have been falsified. Yeah. Like Bob Lazar's MIT report card. And I'm not a debunker. I'm not about that. There's something about this story that is based in truth. Okay. And everything that I was very comfortable with, and I still am, the ONR then comes out and poo-poos on my pretty solid accepting of the facts. Because then the Office of Naval Research stated in 1996, they said, ONR has never conducted investigations on radar invisibility. What did I state at the beginning of this show? Right? The Gauss effect, high voltages, right, and cranking up these batteries and these generators on these ships to these high voltages to try to hide themselves from German U-boats. I believe that absolutely 100% they were experimenting with that any way that they could. All right. World War II was a very heavy situation, but they said they never did. They never experimented with invisibility in 1943 or any other time. And I find that is BS. Okay. Now, they said this in 1996. There's no way that that's not true. They absolutely have been trying to figure out how to stealthify our ships since pirate days. Okay, it's just the way that it is, and so I'm not buying that, and I never have. And they also said ONR was not established until 1946, and therefore denounces the accounts of the Philadelphia experiment as complete science fiction. And I'm just not buying it. Now, there was a reunion of Navy veterans who had served aboard the USS Eldridge, and they told a Philadelphia newspaper in 1999 that their ship had never made port in Philadelphia. Okay. Further evidence discounting the Philadelphia experiment's timeline comes from U.S. Eldridge's complete World War II action report, including the remarks in section of the 1943 deck log. All of that is available on microfilm. Now, could it have been altered? My thing is, if you are going to be loading these heavy batteries, these generators, Tesla coils, whatever, onto these ships, that is you are not letting the Germans know that this is what you're working on. That's it. It's the most secretive of secrets. And did they take it out and did it work? I don't think you're going to let people know what we are doing to make our ships invisible to radar, not even to this day. And so I'm just not buying into that part of the story. To say that they never worked on the invisibility of our Navy ever, come on, just stop right there. Stop right there. So I believe that part of the story is true.
Well, it is also believed there is one theory talking about trying to make the ships invisible, and it is believed that the Navy was working with aliens, which also with the Montauk Project, which Al Bielek was a part of later on in his life. He also stated that Project Montauk also had something to do with aliens, if not being directed by them, specifically the Draco, a type of reptilian. Now, again, there is no factual evidence to back up these claims. We really just have Bielek's word on it, on these theories and on this story as a whole. But I find that kind of interesting because this is around the same time that there is an alleged story that Eisenhower had signed a contract with ETs to get technology from them and they do some kind of trade. It's about around the same time. So I mean, if you believe that and if you're on that kind of bandwagon, then I don't think it would be hard to believe that maybe the Philadelphia experiment, Project Rainbow, has to do with extraterrestrials. Lazo, thank you again for another super chat. It says, maybe the Philadelphia experiment happened in a similar timeline and the story bent into ours. I'm really happy you brought that up because when I was doing a lot of my research and mainly about Al Bielek and then a few others, it seemed like those that did travel through time saw things that happened in a distant reality that didn't happen in this one. And it sounds a lot like the Mandela effect. And we've heard theories, we've heard stories that if it is possible to create some kind of wormhole, a black hole or something, and create a rip in time, it can affect the Mandela effect, okay, where you're having two realities kind of mush into one. Now, this is just theory, okay? This is merely speculation. These are alleged accounts. I don't know if this is true, but if that were the case, if the Philadelphia experiment did actually create a rip in time, which it seems like based off of the information that we have that it did, if it really did go into the future, into the past and blah, 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 then it could have created the Mandela effect where things aren't how they should be in our reality, but maybe in a parallel one.
Christina's been drinking coffee today. She's thinking clearly, concisely, comprehensively, with foundation, and with merit. Well thought out. Well done. And
Why, thank you.
Let's take things a step further, though.
Okay.
Let's take it a step further. Because, and I keep going back to the degaussing. Remember what I just said? ONR said in 1996, we never did nothing, man.
Right.
Nothing. Invisibility. No, ever.
It's a healthy sound.
These are their words. Personnel of the 4th Naval District said the event was a misunderstanding of routine research during World War II at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. It was the foundation for stories that arose around degaussing experiments, which have the effect of making a ship undetectable or invisible to magnetic minds.
Interesting.
Now, this is fact. I mean, this is personnel of the 4th Naval District. Now, we have conflicting things that are going on here. Now, so forget about ONR's complete denial in 1996. I think that we all know that is that's bunk. There is no way that that's true. But the art of degaussing and demagnetizing the television tube so you could see a picture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So demagnetizing metal, changing the state of metal.
Okay.
Here they are to make a ship undetectable to magnetic mines, right? You've all seen that, right? Gilligan's Island. Remember the magnetic mines that would follow Gilligan's boat around the lagoon? Anyway,
I've never seen it.
Christina, just stay on point. Stay on message. Is this putting a ship through a high voltage experiment where you are changing the state of metal to make it non-magnetic or other states of metal, and you have personnel on that ship, and what would be happening to the state of, just imagine if your entire room right now was suddenly the air, everything in it was this high voltage static electricity changing the state of metal of everything that's around. How would your body change? What would go on? Time travel, a wormhole, some vortex, some changing of the atmosphere, something going on where the state of mind and the things that a crew would have to have gone through. I don't know, but I am saying that this is a high vote. They don't know. These are experiments. This is research, and they've got crew members on these ships, and they're trying to figure out things, and they're literally flipping switches to see what the effects were, and not only on the ship, but on the crew. So there is a basis to this. Right. And what would happen to your brain, which is full of metals. Right. And just put all of this together. Maybe somebody was time traveling. Maybe somebody got zapped into the future or to the past or was brought back and changing the state of metals and the metals. You know how much iron is in your blood, and you're throwing out a degaussing experiment on a ship?
I mean, yeah, it's pretty rough. And even Carl Allen, when he was writing to Jessup in letters, he had even stated that people were just disappearing in front of their family and their friends, just out of the blue, out of nowhere. And it maybe could have been led to the electromagnetic issues that were happening in the body that after the experiment. There was even an account of 2 people that caught on fire for 18 days. And I was like, hold on. How is that even possible? First of all, how can you be alive for that long, right? Being on fire. But he had mentioned, again, Carl Allen had mentioned to Jessup that these people, after going through the experiment, their bodies simply weren't the same. They didn't react the same as they used to. And some of them would freeze completely for a few hours, if not a day. And there were 2 people that caught on fire for 18 days. And this is in the book by Jessup that he ended up writing a little bit later. But what I found interesting in all of this, and what Ponyo says, spontaneous combustion, I mean, it is very spontaneous and weird. But it leads you to the questions of what's going on out there in the world right now, and even in this time when this happened in the 1940s, that we simply don't know about. What kind of experiments are going on that we don't know about? What are things that the human body can do that we don't know about yet? And will we ever find out, or will it always be a secret and be weaponized?
So now enters, and you're right on all of that, because we got to talk about Jacques Vallée.
We do.
Jacques Vallée jumps into the fray here, and very smart guy. We love Jacques, right? Oh, by the way, I mentioned Gilligan's Island and the lagoon and the magnetic mine episode, which was one of the best, by the way. And we've got a Marianne debate going on in the chat room. Christina has no idea, again, what I'm talking about.
I don't.
Okay, all right. So moving on. Researcher Jacques Vallée describes a procedure on board of the USS Ingstrom, which was docked alongside the Eldridge in 1943. The operation involved the generation of powerful electromagnetic field on board the ship in order to deperm or degauss it. That's right. With the goal of rendering the ship undetectable or invisible to magnetically fused undersea mines and torpedoes. The system was invented by a Canadian, Charles F. Goodeve, when he held the rank of commander of the Royal Canadian Naval Volunteer Reserve, and the Royal Navy and other navies used it widely during World War II. Wait a minute. Didn't the ONR just say we never did that? British ships of the era often included such degaussing systems built into the upper decks. The conduits are still visible on the deck of the HMS Belfast. That's right. You can see it right now in London. Degaussing is still used today. However, there's always a however. However, it has no effect on visible light or radar. Vallée speculates that the accounts of the USS Ingstrom's degaussing might have been garbled and confabulated into subsequent retellings of the story, and that these accounts may have influenced the story of the Philadelphia experiment. So Vallée cites a veteran who served on board of the USS Ingstrom and who suggests it might have that. Are you ready? It might have traveled from Philadelphia to Norfolk and back again in a single day, at a time when merchant ships could not. Use of the Chesapeake and Delaware Canal and the Chesapeake Bay, which at the time was open only to naval vessels, use of that channel was kept quiet. German submarines had ravaged shipping along the East Coast during Operation Drumbeat, and thus military ships unable to protect themselves were secretly moved via canals to avoid the threat. The same veteran claims to be a man that Allende, right, witnessed disappearing at a bar. He claims that when the fight broke out, friendly barmaids whisked him out of the bar before the police had arrived because he was underage for drinking. They then covered him up by claiming that he disappeared. Now, so when you take a story like this and you've got all of these brilliant nuggets, degaussing, high voltages, experiments, research, the Germans, right? And everything that was going on, the covering up of the ship's logs, which I am convinced had to have happened, the experiments that were going on. Clearly, the Eldridge and its sister ship, the Ingstrom, were being worked on and experimented on and had degaussing systems installed. And then to have ONR say that, no, we never did that. I'm not buying into any of that. That was never part of our research, and that the Eldridge was in New York and then in Bahamas, and it wasn't in Philadelphia. When a veteran said, no, the Eldridge was next to the Ingstrom, and we were working on both ships at the same time in Philadelphia, and it went from Philadelphia to Norfolk and back the same day. Right? Well, There's too much here that's based on fact. The part that is so curious for me, Christina, is the use of naval personnel on these ships and having the experiments happen on these ships with the research, trying to figure out what's going on, and to put a crew through a high voltage charge of a ship made of steel is nuts to me. So there's no telling what could have happened and what stories resulted from those experiments and research.
I can't even imagine. I really can't. Now, in this weekend, you are going to be in Laughlin, Nevada for the UFO conference. One of the people being Miss Paula Harris.
Yep.
And Miss Harris not only has written a book with Mr. Jacques Vallée, but she also did an interview with Mr. Al Bielek a little before his passing. Now, but before we hear about that, I want to hear your perspective on Mrs. Harris. Do you feel like she is someone that gives the truth all the time? Or it's someone that may be kind of just like a regular host anchor that just kind of says whatever?
No, Paula Harris is so determined. It is her life's mission to figure out what is going on, what the government knows, its effect on the future of mankind. And with not only ET, and is ET partially powered by AI, and is AI part of what we're doing here, and is it our future too as well? All of that is her life. That is her life's mission. She's flying all over the world. She's done so many events in Europe and Central and South America. Her international connections to what is going on out there, it's just incredible, and she is tireless. I'm not going to say how old she is, but she revealed her age on Fade to Black a couple of years ago, and I was blown away. I mean, I just couldn't believe it.
And he just had her recently as well.
Now, but this is the thing. She was J. Allen Hynek's research assistant. Now, and if you just think about the heaviness of that, and she was teaching in college. She was a teacher, and left that for full-time UFO research, and got into this subject. And what a wonderful thing to have J. Allen Hynek as your mentor, you know.
Yeah.
And so now. One of the things that I love about Paula, she can recount and relive an event with such great detail. And she's had some pretty extraordinary things happen. And that includes her relationships with Colonel Corso and J. Allen Hynek, and of course Stanton Friedman, and on and on and on. The list is
endless.
It's so respected, her list. But and so when it comes up to something like, Al Bielek, Of course, Paula's going to be on that case. Of course, she is going to. I'm talking about Al. She's going to be on that ass, right? She wants to know, and she's going to go and ask those questions because she is trying to get to the bottom of this. When Al was, I had on Fade to Black. This is probably 6 or 7 years ago. I had on the last interviewer of Al Bielek and was like supporting him through the last years of his life, and was able to just sit down and have conversations with him over a couple of year period. And I think the video series, the documentary Conversations with Al, I think is what it's called. I could be wrong, but the attention that Al got, everybody was trying to get to him to get to his information, and he was living by himself. He was poor. I mean, he lived, and he was old. He was old. When Paula interviewed him, he had to have been in his 80s. I'm sure of that. I don't even. Let me see something real quick, because I know we're getting ready to go off the air. Al Bielek, and let's go to Wikipedia here. Oh man, he doesn't have a Wikipedia page.
He died in 2011.
2011. How old was he?
90s, in his 90s, but I don't know exactly.
Yeah, and so those last, which he talked about a lot. I think he just wanted to be left alone. There wasn't any. He wasn't making a living off of this. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of people assume that there were book deals and there were movie deals, and he had an agent and TV series and films and things. That wasn't part of Al's life. And he died, and he was destitute. He was penniless. He was broke. But yet everybody was trying to get to him. And I think he just wanted to just ride out the days. But his interviews, and I've read the text too as well. It's phenomenal viewing, and I highly recommend it. All of it. There's probably a good 15 years of Al Bielek out there.
Yeah, there's a lot. And I feel like when you're just jumping into the Philadelphia experiment, it's kind of hard to get to Al, get that information. You really have to dig and dig and dig to find him, and then to find the information. I mean, that was my issue. I mean, I didn't know about him until spending hours upon hours reading through books and going online and trying to find everything that I possibly could. And then he came up, and I was like, oh my gosh, he's the best character in the whole story. Why is he on the front lines? He's got to be there. Witness Citizen, thank you so much for the super sticker. I really appreciate it. And we just got a few minutes left, and I'm really happy that I'm really happy the way that you talked about Paula Harris and the way that she conducts herself based on your opinion. And I had no idea she was an assistant for Al Hynek. Now that's insane.
Yeah, 6 years, six or 7 years. So there is on Audible. Now I'm going to get this. I can order this right now. The Philadelphia Experiment Revealed, narrated by Al Bielek and Preston Nichols, who's no longer with us as well. Preston was amazing, great audio engineer too as well. And Duncan Cameron. Wow. So there's one with Al Bielek, and it's 6 hours and 3 minutes.
Dang.
Yeah. And that's on Audible. Yeah. I'm gonna get. I gotta hear Al's voice. Yeah, man. So man, 2,187 wound up in a hospital. It was crazy. It was crazy.
Oh, jeez.
Nurse comes in. I said, "Hey, nurse." I'm saying, she's like, dude, Al Bielek, man. Love that guy.
He's I mean, for those that are interested in his story, there's a lot to it that we did not cover today. There's a lot of aspects. There's even one aspect saying that the military wiped his identity as Ed Cameron and changed it to Al Bielek. So if you really want to jump into that kind of rabbit hole, listen to his conferences, the ones that are recorded.
Right, that's right. Duncan Cameron was his
was his brother, and then he was Ed Cameron, but then his name got changed, and this whole time travel thing, and the government was threatened by him through the space-time continuum, and honestly, you really have to hear it from him. You have to hear it from him to get the understanding, because it's a lot. It's really a lot, and for us to even talk about today in just a short period of time. Jimmy,
so I think the nurse, I said, "What year is this?" Nurse says this 2137. I said, "Hey, I got to get back home. Dinner's going to be ready." And how am I going to get back home? I'm going to get back home. What is that's the news? I'm watching the news. Where am I? I'm in a hospital. I need something to eat. Yeah, man, I was just like, man, Al Bielek. And to hear him do that for 6 hours, and I would just be glued, Christina. Glued. Al, give me another paragraph, bro. Don't stop now.
I mean, 6 hours is a good chunk of the day.
That was just like part one, because he would just go on and on and on. It's just incredible. I love Al Bielek. I miss him a lot. All right, so what's up for next week? What are we doing next week? Congratulations on the NX Network.
Thank you. The first show aired on yesterday, and it was exciting. I was nervous, I'm not gonna lie, but it was really awesome. As for next week, let's do the Montauk Project.
I'll do Montauk. I'll do my best. I'll do my best Al Bielek. I'll read from one of his books. And Stuart Swerdlow. All right, so if we're going to do Montauk, listen, everybody in the chat, we've got to run. I've got a show tonight. I've got a jet. But Stuart Swerdlow, everybody look up Stuart. Do a little, and you can go, there's a couple of episodes of Fade to Black too you can go back and listen to and get a little taste of that and Montauk, because that's about as fascinating as it gets.
It's really cool, and it's intertwined with the Philadelphia experiments. Yes. I think it's really good to bring it up for next week. But that is all the time we have for today. I want to say thank you to everyone in the live chat, everyone's super stickers, super chats, and all my Patreons. Jimmy, who do you have on tonight for Fade to Black?
Me. My guest is me. It's Fader night. Fader night tonight, because tomorrow I'll be on the road, so no Fader night. So I cannot survive a week without hanging out with the Fader knots. So it's Fader night tonight. I'll see everybody tonight.
If that's the case, I'll have to call in. Yeah. Bug you.
Call in. I dare you.
Okay. It's on.
I'll see you.
Bye, everybody. Pick up my call. Bye, Jimmy. Thank you again so much to everyone joining me here today for Mysteries with the History. Guys, I think these topics are getting more intense after each episode, and the Montauk Project is one you do not want to miss. I'm going to be jumping over to the UCR, Unidentified Celebrity Review, a little bit later, which will be starting momentarily, and the topic will be today's Washington National Cathedral speeches on our future in space with Avi Loeb, Bill Nelson, and Jeff Bezos. So it'll be interesting to dig into their comments on that. And one more time, I want to say thank you to everyone. If you liked this video, please hit the like button and share it with those that are interested in the subject. And remember, keep your eyes on the skies.